Hi guys, so today we will see a new question number 18, which is to create a class employee for storing details such as name, designation, gender, date of joining and salary. Then we have to define some functions around which first of all is to calculate total number of employees in an organization. Second is to count the number of male and female employees. Third is to count the employees with salary more than 10,000. And then fourth is to compute employee with designation assistant manager. So we have to return the number of these employees. So what we can do is let's just copy this question and head on to our text editor. Let's just paste it here and comment this out so it won't interfere with our code. So now as per the instructions, first of all we have to create a class employee. So let's just create a class employee and then let's just give a pass here so that we can think for a moment that what all things we would need in our class, and then we can continue to define that. So first of all, as we know, whenever we use the object oriented programming, means creating classes and objects, there are two things basically, the class and an object. So the main difference between class and object is class is a general structure to create an object. So basically, as we can say, we can take an example of human. So each human have two hands, two legs, one nose, two eyes. So this is a basic structure of a human being. And then from that we can create multiple objects, or multiple peoples are created using the same structure. So there are many peoples. Similarly, they have some unique features such as their face look different, or some may have hair, some may have different styles of hair, some may have different color of their iris. So depending on this, the objects differ from each other, they become unique. Similarly, while we create a class, it is generally a structure of employee. So what all things he may have, here they have given he may have a name, designation, gender, date of joining and salary. So similarly we have to create these things in the employee. So in the object oriented programming, there are main two things. First of all is the property and second is the method. So properties are general values which we can pass, or we can retrieve from the class. So in general, for a property of a human being can be a name, so it is a value which he contains. So uh, so if we ask a human his name, he may give any of his value, whichever name he has, such as Ram, Sham, Rohit, Priya, Riya, etc. So similarly, we can pass some name properties and we can use it. And the second thing was methods. So these are the actions performed by the class. So what do we mean by actions? If we generally take example of human, then the action is to do some work. So he is proficient in doing construction work, or he is a software engineer, so he can program. So similarly, he can do various stuff, he can perform some actions. So these actions in the programming sense mean as methods. So similarly here, as defined function members to compute, so these are basically functions which are computing, calculating. So it is also an action, calculating the number of employee. So number of employee is a condition that, and the main function is to calculate that thing. So similarly we can create such classes. So we have seen here we require these all properties. So let's just create this, but before creating this we would have to go through the init function. So init is an basic function. So let's just give the compulsory parameter. So let's just see what is init. So whenever an object is created using this class, so let's just create one object e1 employee1, and to create we have to give class name and then the parenthesis. So this now creates an object. So let's just print this object and see what all stuff we get. So e1, we execute this, so we are getting a main dot employee object. So employee object at this address, so this is stored somewhere in the memory, so it is returning the memory address of that object. Similarly, if I create one more object e2, and let's just print it also. So we can see we are now getting two objects, and in this addresses are different. So we can see there is an different difference in the address. So these two objects are unique objects. So they are defined by that structure but are two unique copies. So similarly, if we have to see the values or we have to access the properties of E1, the first employee, so what we have to do? So how can we refer to that? So for that all things, a self parameter is inbuiltly created using the Python itself. So whenever we create a class, each function takes an compulsory parameter, which is this self, or we can also name it anything as we want, but in general there is an tip that you should use self, so the Pythonic thing remains constant. So this self refers to the unique ID of the current player. So if E1 is stored, then this address is stored in the self. So basically if we try to print this, so let's just print this self, so we will get the same thing here. So what we can do is we can provide a message, so printing self, and then let's just execute this. So we haven't used this function, but we can see automatically it is executed. So this init function is called whenever an object is created. So here E1 and E2 are the objects we have created. So whenever these objects create, inbuiltly Python calls a function called as init. So therefore as we have not used any functions here, then also Python internally calls this init function automatically. So we can see printing thing, and for the first object whenever we created, we got this thing, first string, this address and this address is the same. So we can see the self refers to the same address or the same object E1, and the second is for the second E2 object. So you can see these two are similar. So generally self contains the reference to the unique object created by itself. So similarly, what we do, we will create separate unique properties. So self dot name equal to, let's just take empty string, then self dot, so this dot is used to access this object and then create a property or create or access. So similarly, if we use E1 dot name, then we can access that property. Similarly, while we are initializing, whenever we initialize these things, so it is automatically created. So then name, then designation, let's just keep this also as a string, and then self dot gender, then self dot date, let's just take underscore instead of space, so date of joining, this also as a date string, and then self dot salary, this can be as an integer. So now these are the properties which each of the object may have, as we are defining a structure. So each of this object will have name, designation, gender, date of joining and salary. So now we need these values from the user. So what we can do is, or we have to pass a parameter. So as we know in the functions, we pass parameters to modify the value inside the function. Similarly, this is also a function, we can see def, and this is the name of the function. So we can directly pass some parameters and rename these things. So let's just take name. So now if we execute, it will throw an error. So we can see E1 employee, so we are creating an object of employee, and this type error underscore underscore init, this is our special function, missing 5 positional argument such as name, designation, gender, DOJ and salary. So these parameters are not passed, so we have to pass it here. After employee, we have to pass the name, designation, gender, date of joining and salary directly in the employee class. So while we are defining this object, means we are creating or initializing an object, we have to pass those parameters. So what we can do is we can now again print these things. So we'll get these objects addresses. So we don't need that information. We need the name, designation, gender and salary. So what we can do, as I said, E1 Now we have to access a property, we can use a dot and then the name. Again e1 dot designation. Let's just take e2 dot salary and execute this. So e1 means the employee 1 has a name Rohan, e1 designation is manager, and e2 means the second employee's salary is 8,000. So now we can access these properties, so we can create these things. So now we have an employee class which has these details. So now what we have to do is, the second part of the question says define function members. So let's just create these all functions, the 4 functions, and let's just take define calculate employee, calculate underscore employee, and this would also take a self. Let's just don't give this self, and let's just put a pass. And what we can do is we can call that function and see what happens. So e1 dot calculate underscore employee. So let's just execute this. It will throw an error. Calculate takes 0 positional arguments, but 1 was given. So as I said, automatically Python gives an parameter which is called self, which we store as self. So here what is this saying? Calculate employee doesn't take any positional argument. So here it doesn't take any argument, but 1 was given. Which is that one? It is the self thing. So if we now write self, so the thing is gone. So what we can do is let's just return self and see what happens as we are printing this. So here also self refers to the same object which we have created. So instead of returning self, we have to return the number of employees. So first of all, we have to store that things also. So for now, let's just give a pass and then do some other thing. So what we can do is we can store all of the employees created using this class in something. So basically we can store it in a list. So let's just take employee underscore list and create an empty list. So what we can do is, these are the static things. So here we can see self.employee list is not given. This is just an employee list. So this is a global copy, or this is a parameter which is common for all of the employee. So whichever employee you may create, it will always contain this thing, and this is not unique. So here self.name was unique for himself, but this employee list is not unique. It is a global. Global means anyone can access. Any employee can access this thing, and he would have the same reference. So if I have 1, 2 and 3, so e1 and e2 both would have the same thing. So let's just take e1 dot employee list, employee underscore list, and execute this. So we can see 1, 2, 3. So what we can do is, instead of using 1, 2, 3, we can append the employee itself in this employee list. So let's just take what we can do is after performing these all steps, we can do employee list dot append. So we will go on appending the new employees we create. So self. So what will this do? Whenever we create a new employee, so that self means the address or the reference to that object is appended to this employee list. So what will happen at first? Let's just okay. So here we are getting a name error. Name employee list is not defined. Okay. So here we have to use self.employee list. So what are we doing here? We are generally accessing this employee list using this self function. Means we are going to this object reference, then accessing this employee list and appending the self. We are appending self means we are appending the address or the reference to this object to the employee list. So now let's just create one list or let's just execute this. So we can see 2 objects are there in the list. Okay, so if I comment this out, means it is not being executed. If I create only 1 employee, then we can see 1 employee is added. If I create this thing, if I uncomment this and execute, so now I can see, first of all, employee 1 was created, then employee 2 was created, but here while I am going to print e1.employee list, I am getting both of the employees. So how can this be? So what has happened? we used the self.employee list and appended self, so there should be one reference. You would have this doubt, but what I have said, this employee list is a global list, means each of the employee, each of the unique object employee will have the same copy of this. So whenever I use this append function, it will be appended to the global list, the main list. So if I create more such employees, so let's just copy this, and I will create this total 6. So what I can do is execute this, and now I can see this is first, second object, third object, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So total I have 6 objects in this list. So how this became? Because it was a global list and everyone can access and modify it. So therefore I am now getting 6 objects. So now you can see, as they are having the same name, but then also these objects are different. These objects are stored at different locations. So these are duplicate copies but have some unique IDs, such as this unique address. So similarly, let's just remove this. So now you would get an idea how many employees. So yeah, so now you can see we have 2 employees. So if we create multiple employees using the same class, it would have the reference of all the objects stored in this list. So what we can do is, in the calculate employee function, we can calculate the length, or we can directly return the length of what? The employee list. So self dot employee list, so employee underscore list. So this should give me 2. So let's just calculate this thing. So take this function name, and yeah, so let's just execute this method. So as this is a method, this performs some action, and here also we have defined this as a method. So we are using this parameters. So e1.calculate employee is giving me 2. If I again copy this, so let's just copy this thing. So now I should get value as 6, because these are 1 2 3 4 5 6 employees. So like this only how we can create multiple employees, and we would have a reference of each of them, and we can count the number of employees. So the first thing, total number of employees in an organization, is completed. Then we have to calculate count of male and female employees. So similarly, what we can do is, we can create a function gender underscore count, and then it would take an parameter self, which is compulsory. And then what we can do is, for employee, let's just take emp in self dot employee underscore list. So we will take that list, we will loop through it, we will take each of the object as emp, and then if emp emp dot gender equal to m, then what we will do, we will keep a counter of this. So let's just create 2 variables, male count, male underscore count equals 0, and then female underscore count equal to 0. So now if emp dot gender equal to male, what we can do is male underscore count plus equal 1, and then else what we can do is female underscore count plus equals 1. So we would get the count of this, or instead of else, what we can do is, we can check elif emp dot gender equal to female. So here also double equals, yeah, so closing thing, yeah, so now it should work fine. So now we would get the number of male and female in this thing, and at last what we can return is, let's just directly return a format string, or instead of that, we'll return the male count and female count, male count and female underscore count. So we can use that thing. So what we can do is, so gender count underscore count So if we execute this, so 1 and 1, we are receiving a tuple because we have one male, one female. So if we copy this, and now what we have, one male, one female, two males, two female, and let's just take three male and two female. Yeah, so let's just execute. So we can see here three are males and two are females. So what we can do is we can also use this in a format string. So let's just use this. Male count equal to this thing, and female count equal to this thing. So done dot format and execute. So this should throw an error. We have to decompress it. So we have to unbox the tuple. So now male count is 3 and female count is 2. So here this asterisk symbol means that we are unboxing this tuple. So instead of returning a tuple, we are returning the separate elements 3 and 2. So format is getting 3 and 2, and due to the format thing, the 3 and 2 is automatically getting at its place. So male count is 2 and this. So let's just print the employee count also. So let's just directly take the format string. So employee count equal to, again the circular brackets, and in this we can take anything. So let's just take e1 dot calculate underscore employee. Okay, it's calculate employee. So let's just paste that here and the parenthesis. So now it should work fine. So employee count 5, and if we uncomment this, male equal to 3, female equal to 2. So let's just comment this again, and what we can do is, the third thing is to calculate the employee with salary more than 10,000. So let's just take 12 and let's just increase this to 11. So yeah, so what we can do is, either we can return the count of employee, or instead of returning the count of employee, the names would be fine, or either the employee itself. So what we can do is salary above 10, or instead of, what we can do, we can create a general function. So salary underscore filter, and then it will take a self parameter, which is compulsory, and then the salary. So for now we will set it to 10,000 because the question asks that. Then what we can do is, for emp employee in self dot employee list, in self dot employee list we can go through each employee and then check if emp dot salary equal to greater than the 10,000. So in our case it is 10,000, but as we are using general case, we can use this variable, the parameter. So this salary parameter, and it should be greater than or equal to. So what we can do is, we can create a list of them, or we can store the names. Both would be fine. So let's just take a list. So employee list emp underscore list, we are going to return this. So let's just append the thing. So emp dot append the emp. Okay, instead of emp we have to use emp list. So we are using the local list and we are appending the employee to that list, and at last we'll return that thing. Return emp list. It's underscore. Yeah, so this should work fine. Either we can return the list of names. So for returning the list of names, what we can do is, let's just copy this, comment this, and here you have to just change, instead of emp dot name. So this should return a list of employee names. So let's just print that directly so we get an idea. So print even dot salary filter. So we can use this method. Let's just paste this and let's just execute. So this worked fine. So 2 Rohans were there. So instead of Rohan, what we can do is we can convert this to Sham. So okay, so if we execute this, Rohan and Sham. So similarly, if we take the parameter, which is the salary, to 5,000, then we should get Rohan, Monica, Ram, Priya and Sham. So each of the member is greater than, having salary greater than 5,000. Let's just take this to 8,000. So Monica, Ram and Sham, okay, Monica, Rohan and Sham are having salary greater than 8,000. So this works fine. After that, the last question is to count the number of employee with designation assistant manager. So let's just keep Sham as assistant manager, ASST. So let's just take the name same, so we won't have some confusion, manager, and let's just convert this into assistant. Okay, let it be, this would be manager, and let's just take a new entry. Yeah, so we should change this name also, 3 4 5 6, and then instead of Sham, what we can take is Shruti, assistant manager. Yeah, female, and then the joining date, let's just take something as 19 instead of 2, 11 and 1998. Salary would be 9,000. Yeah, so this should work fine. Now we have to check for the assistant manager. So same thing, the such as salary filter, instead of salary we have to just check the designation filter. So designation underscore filter, then the self, then the designation. So inbuilt default value would be assistant manager, and we can modify it later, or we can pass a parameter and it should work fine. So let's just paste the same code, and let's just remove this thing. So employee list would remain same, as we would require the list. And if employee salary, okay, instead of employee salary we have to check the designation, and here also our designation which we are checking. So instead of greater than equal to, we have to use equal to designation, then emp.list name, or we can return the employee. So same thing, nothing will change, and let's just print this thing. So print even dot just this, yeah, designation filter. So let's just copy this, paste here, and the parenthesis. So Sham and Shruti are the assistant manager. So let's just let's just uncomment this and execute this all. So here we have 6 employees. We can see E1, E2, E3, E4, E5, E6. So employee count is 6, male count is 3, female count is 3. So what we can do is we can change this to Shambhavi, and instead of male we can put this female. So yeah, so now this should work fine. So female are 4, male are 2, and the salary filter is 8,000. Let's just keep this default value, which is 10,000, and see. So Rohan and Shambhavi are having salary greater than 10,000, and then the designation filter, means the designation of assistant manager, is given to Shambhavi and Shruti. So here this should work fine. So this is all for this question. We have created an employee class, created a list, employee list, which is a static member and which holds the reference for each of the object, and then we have used the calculate and various function members defined in this question. So this is all for this question, and let's just meet with a new question in our next lecture.